Welcome once again to the technological adventure that is my life. I'm Johnny Slivers. This is EDH Study Hall brought to you by the Cackling Carnarium, and I'm here with you to bring you my journey through the world of Magic the Gathering from the beginning. And we're in limited edition beta. We're going to be going through this set and then going on through the timeline of when sets were released and continue revisiting all the cards in Magic the Gathering. I am physically pointing my eyeballs at every card in Magic for the purposes of making sure I've revised them, revisited them, and haven't forgotten all about them. This is for the old ones that I was playing with back in the 90s, and this is for the sets that I just wasn't playing. There's a 12-year gap in my history, and this is my mission to fix that gap. So, what we're doing today, I go through a couple of the websites. We use cardsphere.com for our set list and pricing. I go to Scryfall for my Oracle text, EDH Rec for my EDH data points, and then Commander Rules for the actual ban list, just to double check and make sure things that I'm talking about aren't actually banned for EDH. And then we go to the wiki page to look up when things actually released in the history of Magic the Gathering. Yesterday, we left off with Control Magic, and we are picking up again here with Conversion. Conversion is an enchantment for 2 and 2 white mana. All mountains are considered plains while Conversion is in play. Pay 2 white mana during your upkeep or Conversion is discarded. Now, that is some funky old school language. This card was not printed past 4th edition, thank God, just because overall it was a dud. The fact that you could nerf red mana bases was relevant when you had mono red burn decks running around. But in the world of EDH, this doesn't have enough reach. And the fact that you're paying an upkeep sets you back 2 turns. This card is a dud. I think they should do anything with the vocabulary here. All mountains become basic plains. This is a more specific vocabulary. That's important because beta edition, alpha and beta, the vocabulary was specifically very different, and it mattered. If you didn't read it correctly, or it was sometimes very vague, it had a big effect on the game. So yeah, and then they changed it from discard. So during your upkeep, pay 2 white or destroy Conversion. This really, I wouldn't advise anybody playing this in their EDH deck unless your meta is very heavy skewed towards red mana bases and a lot of mountains. If you've got, somebody's always running around with Krinko and Zozu the Punisher, yeah, then okay, you want a Conversion kicking around. But other than that, it's really not worth it. So let's move on to something I like is a bit more exciting, actually. After Conversion on the list, we have Copper Tablet. Copper Tablet is what they called continuous artifact. It is 2 colorless mana to cast. It was only ever printed in Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. Also Collector's Editions and International Edition. The ability on the card is Copper Tablet does 1 damage to each player during his or her upkeep. This is kind of like, this was the original Sulfur Vortex. And the fact that it was colorless made it pretty powerful. I never personally got to play with this card. I saw the card in my earliest days, but I really haven't seen them kicking around. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I think Copper Tablet is playable. Yep, it is legal in EDH. So Copper Tablet, if you got access to one of these, if you can get an unlimited, they're like $14 for Copper Tablet. That's solid. And there's been other cards printed that have the similar effect. Copper Tablet, it does. They very often will do similar things, but the fact that Copper Tablet was 2 mana for an artifact, it could fit in any deck, and it does 1 damage on each player's upkeep. It just starts a clock. And in EDH, it's a very slow clock, but it's relevant. Like being able for this to fire off and hit your opponents. If say you're being cheeky and playing the Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood combo, and you just need some static damage hanging out on the field, this is a great card to do that. So yeah, I like this card. I don't recall if it's reserved list. I hope not, but I mean, I can't. Given the price, doesn't look like it's been bought out, with the exceptions of limited alpha and beta, they do have higher price points, but this does not have the hallmarks of something that has been bought out by the investors. So I'm going to guess it is not on the reserve list, but I can always, if somebody wants to put in the comments whether or not I'm correct or incorrect, that's fine. But ultimately, I like this card. If you have access to a copper tablet, put it in your EDH deck, especially if you're doing like a kind of punishment deck. This goes in a Zozu the Punisher deck, just because. And yeah, I like this card. What else could this go into? I don't know. Something that this works in. I think this might work in a Rakdos Lord of Riots deck. Maybe. Oh, it's doing damage. Yeah, I'd have to read Rakdos Lord of Riots just to check, but I don't think. I think this is more relevant in kind of like a mono red punishment deck or something where you're just trying to grind out damage across the board. Yeah, this is a good card. By all means, if you have it, play it. After Copper Tablet, we have another very, very powerful card that did not get printed past revised. Wow. And the price points too, like the revised going for $30. I'm sad that I let mine go. So Copy Artifact is an enchantment for 1 and a blue. You select any artifact in play. Let's go to the most recent actual printing of it. Yes, select any artifact in play. This enchantment acts as a duplicate of that artifact. If it is affected by cards that affect other enchantments or artifacts, the copy remains even if the original artifact is destroyed. Enchantments on the original artifact are not copied. So Copy Artifact is basically cloned for artifacts, but it counts as both an enchantment and an artifact at the same time. How about that old school art? What do you know? Yeah, this is a sweet card, and this actually combos out with Copy Artifact is one of those things. I think. Yeah, let's go to Scryfall. I want to just double check that Oracle text because that's another little tidbit. Kind of like how Clone had that ability where it's not targeting something; it can actually just play out and copy something on the field. I want to see if they ever updated the vocabulary on Copy Artifact. The errata, yes, Oracle text here. You may have Copy Artifact enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield, except it's an enchantment in addition to its other types. That's a very nice and cleanly worded Oracle text there. That's another one. The way this is worded, it doesn't say it's targeting something, so that's very, very relevant for EDH. When we're talking about copying things that might have hexproof or shroud, that makes a difference. Something that like a shrouded Blightsteel Colossus or some kind of big bad mean artifact that's just been has hexproof on it. I don't think this is so. Well, the other thing is like, especially in any of the commanders that are copy or that are artifact creatures, that could get very interesting. Copy Artifact is also part of a combo for you competitive EDH nerds out there. They I'm trying to remember how it goes. You copy, basically you need Ice-Crown Scepter. And you're going to hear me talk about Ice-Crown Scepter a lot because it's just like that's one of those like combo cards I'd like to go to, and I always wish it would be a good card, but it's never quite there. But in competitive builds for EDH, there are things you can do with Ice-Crown Scepter involving Dramatic Reversal, and then also Swan Song. So you copy artifact your Ice-Crown Scepter with a Swan Song on it, and the other Ice-Crown Scepter has Dramatic Reversal, and then you can do this thing that you infinite loop casting Dramatic Reversal while countering it at the same time and giving yourself Swan tokens into infinity. It's I heard about it on Laboratory Maniacs, and it sounded like a hilarious combo. So you do need a Copy Artifact to do that, and it will set you back about $30, $25 to $30. It's definitely worth getting if you are looking to do some shenanigans with artifacts in blue. This is definitely, I absolutely get this card. This is totally playable in pretty much every EDH deck. If nothing else, you're copying a Soul Ring, which, yes, okay, you're going to end up paying 2 for a Soul Ring, but it's still a Soul Ring. So, yeah, this copies a lot of relevant artifacts in EDH, and if you are in blue and you have a copy of Copy Artifact, you should be playing it. All right, let's move along. Next card down the list. No, wrong. Go back to the list. All right, that was Copy Artifact. Ah, yes, Counterspell, The OG Counterspell is an well, here Counterspell is classified as an interrupt, but as I've mentioned before, all interrupts have been converted into instants because ultimately it didn't matter. They all really operate at the same speed. While technically an interrupt is supposed to be faster than an instant, it never ended up playing that way. It was just you put them on the stack. So Counterspell for 2 blue, counter target spell as it's being casted. And I think the newest versions go to Eternal Masters is pretty much just counter target spell. They simplified it, streamlined it a bit. It's nice that they made it a common card, so that's really cool that it's available in Pauper. This is just if you're heavy on blue or playing mono blue and you need a counter spell, this is just an auto include. It's straightforward. It's simply put the baseline for what you should be looking for in a counter spell, and we're always seeing reprintings of this ability on 3 mana cost cards. It's very often they don't. Wizards, I think, is very, very reluctant to ever reprint a proper counterspell like this in standard because one, it would probably break modern, or it would definitely give blue decks a better edge. And then altogether, it's just a sweet card. I'm not even a blue player, but I can tell you Counterspell is a sweet card. And it's one of the ultimate psych out. I remember years ago, a friend of mine, a long time ago, back when I first started playing, would actually he was playing a game and he had 2 islands up, and somebody was about to do some shenanigans, and they decided to fake them out. They didn't have Counterspell in hand; they just had cards in hand, but they had 2 blue sources, so they floated 2 blue. And this is back in the days of mana burn, and it psyched the opponent out so much that the opponent didn't do anything. They took the mana burn, and then they turned around and won the game because they got to buy that extra turn by psyching out their opponent. Just kind of like an old school thing, but ultimately, if it's totally worth playing in EDH if you're playing that counterspell kind of game in your strategy. I'm not a big counterspell player myself, so I don't tend to play counterspells. I like more permanent effects, like my what is it? Oh my god, the Mind Razor. Oh my god, Nekuzar the Mind Razor. That deck I build to be kind of controlly, but it's not a counterspell build. I like permanent effects that are giving my opponents a hard time or kind of bogging them down in some kind of little detail that's forcing them to do things differently. So yeah, Counterspell. There you go. All right, after Counterspell, moving on, let's get to yes, Crawlworm. Crawlworm has a special place in my heart. When I first started playing Magic the Gathering, this is one of the first cards I ever owned, and it's a summon worm. Let's see, they've reprinted Crawlworm many times at this point. What they do? Magic 2010. That's a funky looking Crawlworm. Creature is a worm. Casting cost is 4 and 2 green. The body is a 6/4, and it's just plain muscle. For 6 mana, you're getting a 6/4. It's gonna do a lot of beatdown, and I don't know. There's something about the original art that it's so sweet, and just it takes me back to the earliest days, like the 90s when it came to Magic. It was, I don't know, it was simpler, it was more casual, it was a lot more fun, and it wasn't so intense. As far as EDH goes, it's just this is nothing worth playing unless they come out with some kind of a worm tribal deck in the future, which is possible. Who knows? It's very possible. The Crawlworm is really just a vanilla beater, and there's, again, better things to do with 6 mana. You can any of the Titans, basically any of the Titans, the Worm Coil engine. There's much better things to do. But just the nostalgia of the art and the style of the card it takes me back. All right, next up, after Crawlworm, we have Creature Bond. Creature Bond, another one that didn't get a printing past 4th edition. That's curious too. I think we'll go to the newest version for the newest text. It is an enchant creature for 1 and a blue. And if target creature is put into the graveyard, Creature Bond deals damage equal to the creature's toughness to the creature's controller. So this was, I mean, in EDH, this could be interesting. I don't know where it would fit. And I feel like you need to have a really heavy removal based kind of deck to make this worth your time. And even then, rather than like waiting for a creature to die in order to do damage to your opponent, you're better off just using some kind of burn spell or something that's going to do the damage right away. This gives your opponent too much control. Like basically you can either you're counting on the creature being in play. So if they're playing a deck like Gave, the Spore Guru, they have sacrifice outlets. You try playing this, they're going to sacrifice a creature. You will have no target. It will just fizzle. Ultimately, this doesn't quite do enough work. It's a neat idea. And I think I tried like long time ago. This is one of those cards I wanted to work. I was trying to make work, but at the end of the day, it's putting too much control in your opponent's hands. It's depending on them having creatures, and it's depending on their creature dying. And there's just too many steps there for this to be a really strong card to play. So it's, a fun concept, but this is not something I would recommend for an EDH 99. All right. How are we on time here? All right, let's get on to Crusade. Now, Crusade was, again, one of the OG Anthem cards. Crusade is an enchantment for white. All white creatures gain +1/+1. So this and its counterpart, Bad Moon, were oftentimes people would play like a white black decks with the knights and kind of do this kind of white black Anthem tribal type thing. So this is an effect that has been fine-tuned and actually made better over time. The fact that it is very specific to white creatures means you're very limited in how and where you can use this. When you're playing a white weenie deck, mono white weenie deck, this is definitely going to be a good card to play. And it was reprinted in a lot of sets. Let's see, but it never made it past 5th edition, and I believe that probably has to do, or 6th edition here, and I'm pretty sure that has to do with the fact that these Anthem abilities were baked into other cards that did the job better. And eventually, when they had to make cuts, when they came to, as the core set grew and moved on through time and they started reprinting more cards, this fell by the wayside for cards that either did the job better or did it differently. And there was no reason for them to keep printing the card. So after 6th edition, looks like they gave it the axe. And it's a neat card to have, like if you're playing a Knight's Tribal, if it happens to be mono white. But altogether, I think before you play this card in your EDH deck, you want to look at what your Anthem effect abilities are in other sets and use the ones that are better suited, and then maybe fall back on this if it happens to fit. But altogether, I wouldn't say this is as strong as I would want it to be for the 2 mana. Moving along here, Crystal Rod is the next one. One is a single colorless mana for what they called a poly artifact. So poly versus mono artifact. This is before they had. I think when you get into the older editions, it's just an artifact. Whenever a player plays a blue spell, you may pay 1. If you do, gain 1 life. So it was, more often these kinds of cards, and this is a series of 5. There are artifacts that do this effect for, I think, all the colors. And I think I got that right. I know they've repeated this effect through the years. There's different versions that have come out. The 1 mana cost, it makes it much more efficient. I don't think they have reprinted them doing just 1, like a casting cost of 1. But if you have a mono blue deck, if you're looking to grind out some advantage, this could be useful. If your meta is heavy on blue, this counts as for any player playing blue spells. This would be a good one to have in the deck, just to kind of like get some incremental life gain. It's a maybe, I think, as far as like a sure thing. It's very meta specific. So unless there's going to be a lot of blue flying around and your deck's designed to kind of take advantage of having floating mana and using it that way, there's better things to do. All right, moving on. Next one up, Cursed Land. Oh, I love this card. This card, I'm pretty sure this card is not an EDH playable card, but it's let's check it out. Cursed Land is 2 and a black for an Enchant Land, and I believe, what does it say? I think it said it was whenever the land is tapped for mana, it deals 1 damage to its controller. That definitely takes me back to my revised days when Cursed Land. There we go. Cursed Land. All right. Enchant Land at the beginning of the I got this all wrong. The beginning of the upkeep of Enchanted Land's controller, Cursed Land deals 1 damage to that player. So yeah, there was a time when I had built a red-black deck and it had Cursed Lands and Warp Artifacts, and it was just this kind of grindy damage deck. And I don't know, Cursed Land was, well, the idea was people don't get rid of their lands, and lands are hard to kill and they won't just die. And this is a card that is interesting to play. I don't think it's terribly EDH playable, but you know what? I think I want to turn EDH rec and just get those stats where it only shows up in 23 decks. So yeah, there's lots of other things you're doing for that mana cost. So neat idea, but definitely not the strongest option in EDH. So Cyclopean Tomb, Cyclopean Tomb. Cyclopean Tomb is an artifact for 4 colorless mana. It's a mono artifact. In fact, did they ever add the tap? No, they just kept it. They never, I guess it was revised when they took the mono artifacts and turned them into cards that you would tap. So you would tap this, turn any 1 non-swamp land into a swamp during upkeep. Mark the changed land with tokens. If the Cyclopean Tomb is destroyed, remove the tokens of your choice. Remove 1 token of your choice each upkeep, returning that land to its original. Okay, so we got to go to Scryfall and check this one out, because that's a little confusing. And like I said, this card is one of those cards that was like way back in the day. The Swamp Walk was like a strategy, so Cyclopean Tome was playing into that strategy. Here we go. Now this is okay. Yeah, they changed it up. This is like a massive wall of text, but pay 2, tap it, put a mire counter on target non-swamp land. That land becomes a swamp for as long as it has a mire counter on it. Activate this ability only during your upkeep, which is rough, because like when you've got to tie up your upkeep with this, it's not terribly strong. When Cyclopean Tomb is put into the graveyard from the battlefield at the beginning of each of your upkeeps for the rest of the game, remove all mire counters from a land that a mire counter was put on with Cyclopean Tome, but that a mire counter has not been removed from with Jesus God, just don't play this card. It's an expensive card because it's old, because it didn't see that many printings, and it's kind of maybe a pet favorite for some people. But ultimately, this is not, I'm not even going to check the stats. I think the only way this is good in EDH is if you're trying to take people off of a mana base, assuming the mana base is not indicating a swamp. So some of the dual lands still have swamp indications. It does slightly narrow it, but all you're really doing with this is putting people off their mana base. And for the speed that it goes at, I don't think it's worth it. All right, so after Cyclopean Tomb, we have Dark Pact. Is this without looking at the first? At first, swap the top card of your library with either card of anti. Okay. The swap is permanent. So this is another anti card. OG Quinton Hoover work. This is like some of that art was really, I liked it in revised. It was a little more kind of whitewashed. But this card, definitely you don't play this in EDH because it's an anti card. Nobody plays anti. Triple black. It's really no point in reviewing it for EDH purposes. But yeah, again, back in way back, people played for anti, and this is one of those trick cards that you would use to like swamp Dark Ritual and then swap something out because maybe your Black Lotus was in the anti pile and you didn't want that to happen. So that was a thing, but for EDH purposes, it does not apply. And then Dark Ritual. Oh, Dark Ritual. So again, like I said, when we talked about Ancestral Recall, there was the series of cards that did 3 of something for 1 mana. This is Interrupt, aka Instant, for 1 black. Add 3 black mana to your mana pool. And this saw a lot of printings throughout the history of the game. I'm not sure how far back. Eventually, as they started fine-tuning the color scheme in Magic, they started this mana ramp wasn't something that they wanted to see happening in black, and they didn't want to see it happening this easily. Mono black decks in the earliest days would play Swamp Dark Ritual and the Hypnotic Spectre, and on turn 2 the Spectre is swinging in and usually connecting with the opponent and just grinding out their hand, and it just made for bad beats, bad feels when it came to playing the game. Got a reprint in Masters 25 as a common, which is good. There's a lot of different artwork behind it too. Like the Mirage artwork I always thought was pretty cool. See, Tempest has some neat stuff. Urza's Saga is gnarly. That looks like this is back in, we're talking about Phyrexian scriptures here, from Void evolved Phyrexian